Hello Malaysians, my name is Professor Dr. Muhammad Tajuddin, and in this video I would like to comment on the topic of marriage for votes. uh, is past insulting women, non-Muslims, democracy, and also Islam. Now, ladies and gentlemen, recently we heard from one of the past members during their muktamar or perhimpunan, where he had suggested that to the young people of PAS, which is the Pemuda, to marry women in order to increase the votes for PAS to become the federal government. Now, some people say that he was mentioning this in jest. For me, whether this person uh, has mentioned it as a joke or whether he was being serious about it, both of this situation to me represents an insult not only to women and non-Muslims but also to the idea of democracy and even Islam itself, in which this party PAS or Parti Islam Malaysia proclaim to be the crusader or the fighter for this religion. Now, let us look at this a statement in which it says that in order for PAS to become the federal government, the non-Muslims must be wooed in terms of votes, meaning they must be encouraged or even persuaded to vote for Parti Islam Malaysia. And so one of the members, which is I think one of the younger members, had made the statement that it's very easy. All you have to do is just marry them, marry the women of the different races and also faith, in order to increase the votes, not just one vote but many votes, in whatever manner that he had meant it. We will discuss it later on. So this was the statement. Now, some of the so-called PAS supporters from the non-Muslims were saying that he was making a joke, and so this is not a serious matter. For me, if he was making a joke about women, that is a serious matter, even more serious than if he was actually being serious. So joking about something is also an insult. If that something happens to be a very important thing like marriage, women, the sanctity of Islam, and even the idea of democracy and things like similar aspects. Now, when we look at the aspect of insult to women, how does this statement insult women? Well, certainly, first of all, marrying for votes degrade the idea of the sanctity of marriage. What is the purpose of marriage? Now, in some countries, having sexual relationship does not require marriage, and therefore marriage no longer has a certain sanctified value in one sense. But in our culture, whether we are of different faith, Hinduism, Muslim, being Islam, Christianity, and others, marriage is a very sacred institution. Now, spiritually, we look at men and women, for them to complete each other in terms of understanding one another and going through life as partners, which then develops into what I call a spiritual discovery or a spiritual awareness, where you would have to understand a person that is completely different than you. As a man, to understand a woman, it's totally different. Similarly, a woman to understand a man, there is no other different aspect than the different sexes or the different genders. Now, biologically and culturally, the fulfillment of the need for certain sexual relationships is also something that completes a cultural and also a religious understanding of what marriage entails. Finally, marriage also entails the idea of the institution of family, meaning that there is a child, and the child then becomes the larger part of humanity in order to replenish the earth and also the planet for us to have human beings. In other countries where marriage is no longer sanctified, there are children that does not have parents or are being left by themselves or even taken up into foster parenting. It becomes somewhat of a problem in terms of society. Some they manage to have it in terms of making the best of the situation, but many would agree that having a stable family is the prelude to having a good community as well as a good nation. So next is that as a father, I have 3 daughters, and for me to marry off my daughters to other men, I would be very careful. My main concern is that can this person take care of my daughter in all aspects, socially, economically, spiritually. This is the most important concern. I would definitely, certainly not allow my daughter to be married to someone purely on the grounds of race or votes and things like that, because this would be demeaning not only to my daughters but particularly to me. So having daughters is a very important part of being a Muslim, where they are under your charge. I am the wali, meaning that I am in charge of their welfare. Even though they are married off, I still make sure that I take note enough in order to see if they have some financial difficulty or they have some family difficulty, that for us to actually contribute in order to ensure their happiness. So for past to just simply say, oh, just marry women just for votes is actually not only insulting to women, but clearly insulting to parents or fathers, especially fathers. And I take offense in that remark. Thirdly, with regards to women, is the past member relating the idea of men can marry more than one woman? Certainly in Islam, it is permissible for a man to take more than one wife, up to 4 wives, according to some scholars. But marrying all these women requires a certain dignity, a certain responsibility that must come with this marriage, economically, socially, as well as physiologically. All these need to be considered, and one cannot just have an expanded family with regard to many wives simply by just wanting to have votes or other aspect that is not what we say of mutual benefit to the women. And so if the past member were relating to the idea that because men can marry up to 4 women, therefore this would then increase the votes, I think that is a damning situation of what I call misusing the allowance or the permissibility of men in Islam to marry more than one woman. Certainly in times of war, in certain times of disproportionate population, this is something which can be then used to resolve such a situation, but certainly not just simply because for the idea of getting vote. That would be again demeaning. Now the next thing is that the statement of this past member is to me insulting to non-Muslim. Does the past member think that non-Muslim are stupid? Does the past member think that non-Muslim have no respect? Does the past member think that women are so easily enthralled by the handsomeness or the beauty of men in Islam? Certainly they too have their marwah, or what we call their dignity. And I do not think that they would give up their dignity simply for the idea of votes. For simply making the suggestion, for me, it is as if it's insulting the whole different races other than Malays, in order to simply secure the idea of gaining power simply for the sake of gaining power. If this issue does not show that PAS is only interested in power for itself, for themselves, then I don't know what will convince the Malaysians that PAS is just in it for the power to dominate, the power to enrich themselves. This is what they are after, and they will do anything and everything, I suppose, including marrying for votes, in order to secure it. So this is something that needs to be understood by most Malaysians, that Islam does not support this, even though their party has the name Islam in it. For me, it is an insult for the party to have the word Islam, and as an insult for them to have such members to be saying things like this. And if there was no apology or reprimand from the top echelons of power in past, I think this is a useless political party that needs to be eradicated one day when we are strong enough to do so. Now, the third thing is about democracy. Democracy is a sacred situation in which it allows each citizen of a nation to cast one vote for one, that is for one person, meaning one person, one vote. Democracy also indicates the idea that the citizens owns the country in a certain sense, where they get to actually decide the direction of the country. Now, hopefully, that democracy means those who are responsible to give votes must do so in an intelligent and also in an inclusive manner. It is not just a simple idea of supporting a race or supporting a religion or supporting a very popular influencer to cast your vote, or getting some money to sell the votes for a meager amount. In all this situation, democracy then fails the nation. And the more so when someone says, well, all we have to do is increase the vote, and one way is to just marry people and marry as many as you can, perhaps. That was the intention. Therefore, you will have your number of votes. So for me, again, the idea of democracy here is actually the responsibility of each and every one of us as citizens to actually think carefully who we think can actually help us to chart the course for the country in a better direction. And certainly, PAS does not present a viable party for us to trust if they were to consider such things like marriage for votes to be something viable, or even making a joke of. Finally, I think PAS, through the silence or through the perhaps acceptance of what this person has said or even joke about in terms of marriage for vote, is actually insulting Islam. How so? Well, Islam has given the dignity to women. During the time of the Prophet, women were properties to be given off in this way and that way, and they couldn't even inherit unless they are certain people who have their own business and things like that. But most of the time, women are property. Even we hear of cases of women or female child who are buried because of the shame of not getting a son. So in this manner, the Prophet Muhammad had put a stop to this by allowing women to have inheritance, which is what the Fara'id is about. Even in the idea of the slave woman, because many people have slaves during those times. Slaves can be bought, slaves can be acquired through war, slaves can be acquired through exchange of property, many ways. But the Prophet put a stop to slavery by saying that if the slave of which you have had sexual relations produce a child, then the child must be considered your children in a sense of property division in terms of inheritance, meaning the child can no longer be a slave. Before that, if you are a slave, if there is a child, the child is a slave. But the Prophet Muhammad put a stop to that. Now, the Prophet Muhammad also gave dignity to women when he had acquired some slaves, in a sense, where he had freed them and married them. So before he take them into his household, he would marry those slaves like Safiya and Juwairiya into his household. So that is giving the dignity to women with that regard. So here is again the situation of Islam having to give dignity to women. But in past, I have heard stories about all members must give bay'ah, or what we call pledge to the president, and if they do not do so, then they must divorce their wife. This is something which is practiced in past at one particular time. I'm not sure whether it's still practiced, but it again shows that women seems to be made into a property, and has lowered the dignity of women. And such statements like this recent statement of marriage for votes again lowers the dignity of women. So in conclusion, I think that such statements by this party that seems to be supported by the top leadership, if they were serious to say that this person has stepped off the limit, and they would have reprimanded him. For me, the statement by this person is worse than what Akmal Saleh has been saying in terms of insulting non-Muslims, insulting Teresa Koch, and a few others, even insulting myself. I think this person, in making this statement, is much worse than what Akmal has been saying or has been practicing in terms of his idea of lowering the dignity of other people than just Malays. But here, actually, the insult is not only for non-Muslim but all women in general, and I don't think that any women should actually consider giving this party any chance at all into the election. So with that, we need to preserve the dignity of all people in this country, whether they are children, the dignity of women, the dignity of all races, the dignity of all faith, in order for us to rebuild this country, hopefully without such party that has people like this Aubidullah, who had made statement about marriage for votes. With that, thank you very much.